Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about growing as a course creator. This is an important topic because as we get good about teaching other people, it's good to remain teachable, right? And we're going to be learning as we're helping other people learn. None of us have ever come to a point in which we are so far achieved that there's nothing new to learn. And there's so much to learn in remaining in that learning phase. It helps us with empathy. So let's look at 3 different ways that we can grow as a course creator. Now, the 3 different ways I'm going to tell you up front, they are books. We grow as a course creator by exposing ourselves to content from books, and they could be audiobooks as well as physical books. We do it from our exposure to people, and we do it from our exposure to experiences. So let's talk about all 3 of them, okay? So the first is books. And I think about books in kind of like 3 different categories. There are books that we learn the content specific books. So if you are going to do a course on, let's say, making the best cookies, then these are books about cookies and about recipes and about the ingredients and those types of things. So books that are specific to the content that you're teaching. So you might be teaching about ballet or dance or transformation, and you go through books that are based on that particular content that you're teaching. It's good to actually develop kind of like the breadth that you can get and sometimes the depth that you can get from books. The second category of books is books that are helpful in learning how to create change in other people. And these could be books having to do with adult learning, books having to do with change or habits, or something to do with growth or transformation. So these are books that help us understand motivations, why people do what they do, and how to maybe motivate or incentivize or influence others to making different changes. Because most of the time when people sign up for our courses, they want to be different. They want that end result, whether it's seeing themselves as a baker or seeing themselves as like a better entrepreneur, a better mother. They are joining our courses because they want the change that that course brings. The third type of books are books that have unexpected surprises. Like these are books that don't have to do with your content. They don't have to do with transformation. But you find sometimes in these books, these unexpected surprises, the content that you can use that is incredibly good for your particular courses or your content. I'm going to share some examples of these because it's hard to explain, but I often get so inspired by books that are outside of the content specific or books that have to do with adult learning or creating change. So let's go through a couple of these, okay? So here are some of the examples that I have. Now, this is from a set of books that I got, and it's like these Harvard classics that I got many, many years ago. And this one was kind of interesting. This is Biography of Franklin, a guy named John Woolman, and a guy named William Penn, which you probably know of. Ben Franklin and William Penn, most people have heard of. I had never heard of John Woolman. So John Woolman was a Quaker, and that was a type of denomination that was really popular in Pennsylvania. Now, Quakers later were known to be very much against slavery, but at the time of John Woolman, Quakers were not anti-slavery. But John Woolman really, really did not believe that slavery was right. And in his very quiet and persistent way, he changed the minds of so many people and then laid the foundation for so many Quakers who later opposed slavery. Now, I had never heard of John Woolman, but he was instrumental behind a huge transformation of an entire group of people. And seeing his way of influencing other people was incredibly helpful as a course creator. I want to influence people to make changes in their lives. And so it was really interesting to see a different way to do it. So that was one of the books. Another book, and this is actually kind of a sad book. This is a book called The Etiology of Childbed Fever. And you've probably never heard of this author, which is Ignaz Semmelweis. I probably slaughtered his name, but he was a pioneer and believed in the idea of germ theory. And that is that we carry germs from one person to another. He believed that all these women who were dying of childbed fever were actually infected by germs that were carried in. He was not believed at all. They thought he was a crazy man. He ended up dying early in insane asylum, but he wrote this book. And to me, it's very treasured because sometimes you can be right and be at the time when a culture is not ready for that change. It didn't change at all the fact that he was right about what he was saying. And sometimes it can be really, I don't know, it's not always good to be, it's not always like rewarding to be right about things. And I'm still very inspired by this man. And then I love this book, Brain Rules, and it does talk about like how the brain works. And this is by John Medina. I've learned a lot from it. And then there are other books that I did from audiobooks. So there's a book called The Gift of Being Yourself. And in that, it talks about the individuality that people have and the gift of just being who God created you to be. I love the book. There's another book that I'm reading right now called How Doctors Think. It's interesting because this guy does these interviews with doctors who sometimes are right and sometimes are wrong in the way that they diagnose and treat patients. And sometimes the way that they treat thinking errors and how those thinking errors affect their care of patients. Now, I don't intend to be a doctor, but this book is really helpful because it kind of opens up the way people think and how that thinking plays out in what they do. As course creators, we are curious about how people think, why people do the things that they do, and how we can influence them to make changes. So knowing how they think is helpful. Another book that I recently read is called Why You Are Who You Are. And it's a book about human personality, and it talks about motivations and how personality, which could be partially nature and partially nurture, affect the thinking processes that people have and maybe some leaning and tendencies towards their thinking. Not everybody thinks like I do. And that's really, really helpful to maybe broaden my scope and my perception of how other people think and take in information. So that was really helpful. There is this unnamed book. I'm not going to name this book, but I read it recently. And the condescending tone of this book was also an eye-opener. It's not something that I want to replicate as much as watch out for. So sometimes when I know a lot about a subject and then I go to talk about it, I want to talk about it, but without the condescending tone that I saw throughout this book. This author would say things like, this is super complicated, so I'm going to make it easy for you. I'm going to dumb this down because it's too hard to understand. I find those type of statements incredibly insulting, and I don't ever want to be guilty of it. So it's good to actually see that in print and go, oh, that is something I need to watch for. There is another book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is a book about trauma and how trauma that happens in childhood can affect the way that people behave differently. We can do our very best to help people change the way they live their life. But a lot of times, if a lot of the choices that they're making are due to childhood trauma, then going through a course may not be the right thing for them, unless, of course, your course is dealing with, overcoming childhood trauma. We can help people, healthy people, make better choices. But if the choices that they're making are conditioned as a result of some difficulty that they went through in their past, it can be helpful to know that and maybe recognize that maybe the course will not work for some people who are dealing with those things, and to be compassionate and loving towards people who have gone through those type of things. And then another book that is completely different. I mean, this book is like I don't agree with a lot of the philosophy. I feel like this particular book is maybe not aligned with my Christian beliefs, but the name of the book is called Loving What Is. And it is really helpful for seeing how you can take some of the facts and the situations and really see it through a different perspective. Like, what if we just didn't fight against what we are dealing with in our lives? We just said, okay, what if we could love what situations we're going through right now? So that's kind of a really, really cool and different perspective that I really learned a lot about, even though I didn't agree necessarily with everything that was in the book. So those are some examples of different types of books that can help open up and broaden a perspective and inform a lot of what I do in my course creation. And of course, I gave just a few books. There are so many more books, and I didn't name them all. I literally have thousands of books, either in my Audible or in my physical library. Okay, so that covers books. Books are a great way to grow as a course creator. Now, the second part is people. And I just put these down in like three categories also, because like I'm a fan of three categories. What can I say? So the first category is people that you know or knew. So these are real people that you've had a relationship with, that you've known in person. They see the world differently. Like, for instance, I have a sister. We're 1 year apart. We were raised with literally the same mom and dad in the same household. We're 1 year apart. So a lot of our experiences are the same, and yet we are so very different. So sometimes, when we have difficulty understanding why would anybody not do what I would do, I think about my sister and how she just perceives the world differently. She behaves differently. Her inclinations and leanings are in different ways. And the same with all the other people that I've known in my life, whether they are somebody that has been older and a mentor towards me, or maybe a non-example. It's what you wouldn't do, like you see what they do and you learn from their mistakes. So people that you've known in the past, people that you know today, these are actual people. The other people that you can learn from are famous people. And when I say famous, it could be a celebrity, but it also could be a historical person like Margaret Thatcher or Nelson Mandela. These are people that we can see the traits in them, and they remain sometimes also examples and non-examples. What caused somebody to do what they did? That can be so informative in seeing the motivations behind other people. And actually, I just had an interview with somebody today, and it kind of blew my mind that this is a real person that I talked to, and I just met her today. And the decisions that she made were so very courageous for the personality and who she was, a shy and quiet person who decided to do what scared the living daylights out of her. She would go and do scary things and she would throw up on her way. But seeing her overcome some difficulty and seeing what motivated her to do those scary and fearful things for her, and how she built her whole business on that. She owns this big, wildly successful business today, and she looks at it and says, it's just amazing. It's something she never would have thought she could do, because she sees herself as a quiet and shy person. These are examples that you can, and people that you get to know, that can really inform a lot of what you create as a course creator. And then the third character is your avatars. These are false or fictional people that you make up, but they're often the people you're thinking of in terms of who you're creating your course for. Now, when you say avatars, avatars could be made up, and they most often are, but they can also be people that you base your avatar on. An avatar can be based on a real person. So those are the three categories of people who can really help you grow as a course creator. Real people that you know, real people who are famous or historical or, celebrities, and then avatars, which are fictional people. And for that matter, you could actually learn from characters that you read in fictional books. The third way that we can grow as a course creator is through personal experiences. And by far, this is such a huge growth opportunity for most of us. In many cases, we can say yes to new experiences. And when we say yes to new experiences, we feed that growth mindset that causes us to just grow much more than where we are today. So one way that we can do it is to sign up for new skills that are hard for us. For instance, you feel like, I could never dance. Dancing is just so outside of my comfort zone. The very idea of dancing makes me throw up, or, freak out, or I'm just so afraid of this idea. That fear that you feel towards something that's so difficult for you might be exactly why you need to do it, because it helps you have compassion and an understanding and greater empathy for the people who sign up for your course, because they really, really want the benefit that your course offers, even though they know it's going to be hard for them. When you have also that same experience of doing something for yourself that's hard for you, and doing it recently, not something you did 10 years ago, not something you did 20 years ago, but something you did last month. So continually working on those experiences can really cause you to grow. So what are some of the things that you would love to learn, but is completely difficult for you? Or what is something that you could learn that you don't want to do, but will benefit you in your courses or your business? There's it is a book, but there's a YouTube series also, and it's based on a book called Rejection Proof. Rejection Proof was written out of Jai Zhang's attempt to overcome a fear of rejection. And so what he decided to do is something incredibly exciting. This might be good for a lot of us to do. And that is, he decided he was going to go 100 days in a row where he would film himself putting himself in a difficult situation where he knew he was going to get rejected. So he would go and ask a stranger for something incredibly difficult for them to say yes to, and he would see what happens. Turns out most people actually said yes, even though he expected them to say no. And he learned a lot from this experience, and his videos went viral. So go check out Jai Zhang's Rejection Proof book. Go check out his videos. It's certainly a lot to learn about doing some difficult experiences. So I'm curious, what kind of books do you want to read? What kind of books are going to help you? What kind of people are going to help you? What kind of experiences are going to help you? Or also, I'm sure you've done a lot of these things. So what kind of experiences and people and books have helped you in the past? I'm curious to see what you're going to do in your future and how you're going to grow as a course creator. I'm actually curious to see how I'm going to grow just as a person also in the next few years. There's no limit to what we can learn if we just keep applying those principles of growth to ourselves. So if you're interested in more videos like this, we have plenty to choose from. So go check out the channel, go like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.